Hello, everybody. Welcome to Theology 101. Today, we are going to look at the book of 3rd John. The book of 3rd John is the 25th book of the New Testament. The New Testament has 5 sections: the Gospels, the Acts of the Apostles, the Pauline epistles, the general epistles, and the book of Revelation. The Gospels contain the life, ministry, teachings, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. The Acts of the Apostles give a historical account of the growth and spread of the Christian church. The Pauline epistles are a collection of letters written by Paul to different churches during his time, while the general epistles are letters written by other leaders such as Peter, John, and Jude to different churches. Finally, the book of Revelation gives a picture of how the story of the world will end with Jesus returning to earth to restore it and reign on it. The book of 3rd John is part of the general epistles section of the New Testament. Like 2nd John, 3rd John is short enough to be written on a single sheet of papyrus. The Apostle John is continuing to comment on how the church should show hospitality to itinerant teachers. The word hospitality means to love foreigners. And during John's time, Christian preachers depended on the generosity of other Christians to fulfill God's mission of preaching the gospel in different areas. Without Lydia, Jason, Gaius, and Philip, Paul would not have been able to travel freely and teach. In 2nd John, the message is to not show hospitality to false teachers who were denying the incarnation of Jesus. In 3rd John, the message is to show hospitality to true teachers of God's word. And so 2nd John is primarily negative, while 3rd John is primarily positive. John begins the letter by highlighting Gaius. Who is Gaius? We see Paul mention a Gaius of Corinth in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 14. And we see another Gaius of Macedonia mentioned in Acts chapter 19, verse 29. And then we see another Gaius of Derbe who traveled with Paul on his last missionary journey from Greece in Acts chapter 20, verse 4. So we see that the name Gaius was very common. In fact, it was the most common of all names in the Roman Empire. So we don't know Gaius's identity in this letter, but we do know something about Gaius's character. John calls him beloved, whom he loves in truth. Gaius, unlike false teachers, is marked by his devotion to the truth. He had a leadership position in this church, and visiting evangelists or missionaries would often stay with him. Remember 2nd John, how John described the false teachers? They were those who did not walk in the truth. You see, Gaius was walking in the truth. He was faithful to what God revealed in his word, and he showed love to strangers by hosting them. This is why in 3rd John verse 6, John says that people testify to his love because of his hospitality to strangers. Now, why is showing hospitality so important? Notice what John says. These teachers accepted nothing from the Gentiles. In other words, they are not being paid by the unbelievers they are reaching with the gospel, so they depended on Christians to provide for their financial needs. This is very important for the church today. Christians should look to support and finance Christian ministries that the world would not support. Missionaries, pastors, and evangelists should not find their financial support from unbelievers, otherwise their motives are questioned. It's not like they can get paid with ads by corporations to support their ministries, and having unbelievers pay them to preach and teach the gospel will create distrust by the listeners. So these Bible teachers need the generosity of other Christians, even those who might not know them, so that they can continue to do God's work. Now, why does John make a big deal about financially supporting Christian workers of the gospel? Notice in 3rd John verse 8 that John says that if you support people who proclaim the truth with hospitality, then you are a fellow worker for the truth. Listen, not all of us will go to seminary and become pastors. Not all of us will be called to travel to far places as missionaries. Not all of us will ever work in the church or be Bible teachers. In fact, most Christians will work a secular job and live in one city most of their lives. But that does not mean you do not work for the truth. That does not mean you do not play an important role in God's mission on earth. How do you think God is going to provide for the financial needs of pastors, evangelists, and missionaries? He will not drop money from the sky, but he wants Christians with money to show hospitality and financially support these teachers. And when you support the right types of people who are faithful to God's kingdom agenda, you are a fellow worker for the truth. You're supporting the mission, even if you never teach the Bible yourself. Gaius was a positive example of hospitality. However, John will transition to Diotrephes, who is a negative example of hospitality. What happened was that John wrote a letter to be read in the church. It was an official command for them to host traveling evangelists and preachers, but Diotrephes destroyed it or didn't let anybody read it to the church. And the reason why he didn't want people practicing hospitality to traveling teachers is because he likes to put himself first. The reason why he destroyed John's letter is because he didn't submit to John's apostolic authority and didn't think it mattered whether people practice hospitality. Now, why would Diotrephes do this? Well, we can guess why he did this because of his name. The name was very rare and it was only given to people born into noble families. So we know that Diotrephes was considered high class and important, at least according to society's standard. So it was his social prestige which motivated him to act this way. He respected himself too much to ever show hospitality to lower class preachers who needed another person's financial help. What poisoned Diotrephes' soul was elitism. He assumed that he was in a certain social class because of his merits, but he didn't realize that God put him in that class so that he can specifically use his money to support Christian workers of the gospel. This is like a trust fund baby who was born on third base and assuming he hit a triple. So instead of investing his money to support people working for God, he prevented people from supporting him. Now, with this concluding remarks, John has come to the end of a sheet of papyrus. The ink made of water, thickened with gum, was still wet. There is so much more he can say, but he wants to hash it out with this church face to face. I'm sure he is anxious to see them in order to support them, but to also protect them. He wants them to be like Gaius so that the mission of God will continue to move on. Thank you to today's sponsor, All Reverence. They offer a free Bible reading app called Awesome Bible. If you want to find out more, I'll leave some links below in the description box. If you missed the last video about the book of 2 John, I'll leave a link here for you to watch. And until next time, see you.